venue. So I went to ocean sciences because I thought digital humanities is better suited then. So good afternoon, esteemed guests, colleagues, students, and members of the wider Gqeberha community. I understand, and rightfully so, that today we are also honored by having members of the community in our presence. So welcome. It's my great pleasure to welcome you all to this seminar hosted by the Faculty of Humanities, Digital Humanities Hub on the theme, The Future of Work in the Age of Artificial Intelligence. We are honored to have such distinguished group of individuals joining us today. And I need to acknowledge my Deputy Dean, Dr. Jackie Luck, who's Deputy Dean of Learning and Teaching in the faculty. And joining us online, I'm not sure if Professor Cheryl Foxcroft has already joined, but former Deputy Vice Chancellor, Professor Foxcroft, who is really interested in issues of AI, virtual learning and virtual classrooms and all that. We are extremely honored to have our panelists today. Styli Charalambous, who is a Mandela alumnus. He sat in these chairs, I assume, Styli. And is also Alumni Achiever Award recipient. In the most recent awards, he was honored by the university. Most importantly, today he's going to be talking to us about his role as the CEO, or rather his work in the Daily Maverick, but he's the CEO of Daily Maverick. So we thank you, Styli, for honoring us with your presence, and we look forward to you sharing with us about the work you do in Daily Maverick. We're also joined online by Jackson Tshabalala, who is also Mandela University BA graduate, so we own him, and project manager at Tangible Africa. I read a little bit about this work. I must say I've been ignorant, Jackson, about your work, and I'm fascinated about the work you do with the children and how you help them learn through coding and all that. So I'm looking forward to that. We've got our own Jonathan van der Walt, a sculptor and a lecturer. I don't want to put you in a privileged position and talk to you more about you because I know you better than any, but we're also looking forward to having you share with us. Of course, I want to acknowledge the people in the Digital Humanities Hub. Today, the people who are present, who are going to be visible, are going to be talking to you, is Dr. Gabi Dlamini, who is going to be facilitating today. But I want to also acknowledge Thomas Terblanche and Dr. Johannes Sibeko, who have made meaning for the faculty in this Digital Humanities Hub. I think it's one thing to talk about something. We've talked about this in 2021 when I arrived. It has been present in the faculty, but to have you drive it so that we have these engagements is very important for us and for us to lead the university in talking about AI or digital enhanced learning. I really wish to thank you for that. So with the presence of the digital felt increasingly in traditional workspaces and mirrored new opportunities emerging in the digital spaces, it's vital that universities engage in conversations such as these, conversations that begin to engage about how technology should contribute to making work better for humans. and humans better at work, especially with the notion that we are preparing as universities students for work that does not exist yet, and where AI is going to be playing a critical role. So it makes sense then that with the presence of technology, that we should equip students with the necessary technical skills to compete in the digitized world of work, to recognize the opportunities it affords, as well as providing a critical philosophical grounding, which we hope contributes meaningfully to the causes of social justice and sustainability within the digital spaces in the future. This is our responsibility in the fields of humanities. And this is what we're striving for in the revitalization of the humanities at Nelson Mandela University. As you may know, the Mandela Digital Humanities Hub is engaged in a wide array of projects within digital humanities and related fields, such as computational linguistics, natural language processing, and artificial intelligence. So this workshop is one of many spaces we've created, or this seminar that the Hub has created to encourage collaboration and networking in these domains. Our mission is to explore and push the boundaries of what it means to be human in an increasingly digital world. And today's event exemplifies this. We look forward to learning from all panelists here today. The Strada Institute of Work has highlighted the importance of adaptability and critical thinking, stating that the skills liberal arts graduates, so liberal arts is arts, humanities, social sciences, the arts. Stating that the skills liberal arts graduates develop will continue to be vital in the future. In a world where AI is transforming entire industries, it is those who can think creatively, solve problems in uncertain environments, and continuously learn who will thrive. And this is what we do in the humanities, to equip students with critical thinking in order to solve problems, especially big social challenges. So this is the message we wish to communicate to all students and everybody present today. We also aim to inspire you to reimagine your approach to evolving work environment. Our distinguished panelists, all at the intersection of AI and the humanities, will provide valuable insights into how AI is shaping or reshaping their respective fields. Through their experiences, we hope to encourage all of you to critically engage with the theme of the seminar, to ask questions and to participate in shaping their future of work and your own future at work in the age of AI. I'll also like to remind all of you here and those who are watching online of the masterclass that will be led by Styli Charalambous tomorrow, which will be a valuable opportunity, especially for our media students, to gain first-hand insight from a leader in the field. I just want to digress a bit from my notes. I asked one student when I was in the lift, I said, I'm getting lost. I'm supposed to be meeting this important CEO of Daily Maverick. And the student asked, what is Daily Maverick? So can you please go online and look at Daily Maverick and make sure that you get news from Daily Maverick on a daily basis? Please do, because I don't want now when I go out of here for people to still be asking what is Daily Maverick. In this day and age, no one should not know what I'm doing marketing for you, Styli. I hope I get something. Okay, so please, this workshop tomorrow is really important from you're getting exposure to one of the leading people in the industry. And then, I think that this may be one of your highlights in your media studies to meet with Styli. Let us take advantage of this unique gathering of minds. So I'm talking here about Styli, I'm talking about Tshabalala, I'm talking about Van der Walt. And I encourage all of the students, I know that staff will also be attending the workshop tomorrow. So I encourage all of you to participate in the discussions tomorrow and today, particularly. Together, we can chart a course for the future of work that is not only technologically advanced, but also deeply grounded in the values of our shared humanity. Thank you once again for being here. And I need to also just apologize that I've got an hour before my next meeting, but I will listen in the first hour. So we look forward, all of us, to the stimulating and thought-provoking session. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Dean, for those, again, opening and welcome. You really, I think, started the conversation already, and students, I'm certain, more fascinated, and of course they'll know what Daily Maverick is now after the 1500 hours. Anyway, colleagues, I don't want to again take too much of our time. I would like to introduce the facilitator, Dr. Gabby Dlamini. She is a colleague of mine. She's a PhD in social anthropology, and specifically focusing on digital social anthropology. I must say, just as a footnote, she sits next to my office, so we share office, and I'm really inspired by her office space, very open and inviting. So with those few words, Dr. Dlamini, I will invite you now to this platform. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Hi. I'm not sure if that was an open invite for all of you to come to my office. If you do, you'll be welcome, but make sure you leave space for the next person to be able to come as well. All right. Good afternoon. I'm going to be introducing our first speaker. Our first speaker, Mr. Jackson Tshabalala. Mr. Jackson Tshabalala is as Prof has already stated, is doing some very innovative and important work with children in the country. He's a visionary leader from Gqeberha, South Africa, dedicated to driving innovation and inclusivity in education across Africa. He's on the leadership team of the Tangible Africa Project, a groundbreaking initiative that introduces coding to learners without computers, earning multiple awards and prestigious second place finish at the African Union Innovating Education in Africa Awards in 2022. Recognized for his impactful work, Jackson was named one of the Mail and Guardian 200 Young South Africans in 2023, highlighting his significant contributions to the continent's progress. Since joining Tangible Africa, has expanded beyond South Africa with successful launches in Ghana, Kenya, Uganda, Sweden, Ireland, England, and several European nations, and now across Asia and the United States, underscoring his commitment to bridging the global digital divide. Academically, he's accomplished. He holds a postgraduate diploma in management practices from Henley Business School, where he is currently pursuing an MBA. His mission is rooted in the belief of living in a developed Africa, leveraging digital technologies to create equal opportunities and drive the continent's development. Beyond his professional endeavors, Jackson enjoys the simple pleasures of life, such as his love for dogs, scenic routes, and a firm belief that ice cream, second only to the toilet, represents the pinnacle of innovation. His overarching goal is to lay foundation for the first world Africa, where digital empowerment, education, and entrepreneurship are cornerstones of a brighter future. Thank you, Mr. Tshabalala.
Oh, thank you. I thought Thomas was going to summarize that, but appreciate the welcome. Am I audible?
Yes.
Perfect. Good day, everyone. My name is Jackson Tshabalala, and it's great to be here. Thank you for that great welcome. You know, I grew up in church, and there was this joke about with a visiting pastor being told that he's laid hands on 10 people and they've come back to life. When your bio gets read, that's the awkwardness you feel. But I'm really privileged to be where I'm at, and coming through Nelson Mandela University and being an alumni of the Humanities department. I just want to thank the team for having me here, the department for helping me build, I think, what is a very fun career. I don't usually say successful because I haven't defined that yet, but I've really been enjoying myself. And today I get the opportunity to speak about the work that we do and how artificial intelligence is influencing that kind of work. So if it's fine, I'm going to share my screen. I have a short presentation. And I'm just going to find out from you guys if it is. Oh, my screenshot. Oh, I can see that it's showing there. Thank you so much. So what I want to talk about today is just what is the human edge in an AI-driven world? Because my background is in the BA general, so I didn't study anything science. I don't even have a coding background. And I found myself in the coding world around all these computer scientists and digital thinkers and data analysts. But how do we shape the future, taking in consideration human creativity as well as artificial intelligence? So before I get into really the concepts of artificial intelligence, I think it's good to let you know what we do, what my background is. So got at Nelson Mandela University, majored in industrial and organizational psychology, as well as English language studies. One of the first things I remember learning, I think it was the first class of industrial psychology, where in our first book, a huge 500 page book, the line, authenticity is all that people need, or authenticity is the most important thing, from Savian, was something that really resonated with me. And the last thing I remember learning as I was leaving must have been in my English language class. And it spoke about how the power of language can change a nation. And taking those two things, realizing that we need to be authentic and we need to know how to communicate well in order to paint pictures in the minds of people so they can see vision, is how I decided to navigate my career. Graduated, started off in entrepreneurship, doing branding and advertising. And just that industrial psychology part of me was like, so many young people are missing out on opportunities that exist because there was a buzzword going around, and that buzzword was Industry 4.0 or 4IR. And everyone was talking about how the world is going to change, the takeover of digitization. It's more than just internet, it's more than just technology, but our jobs are going to be taken over by this digital innovation or technology. And I started thinking to myself, can we leverage this opportunity that's coming in a new world with leapfrogging the developmental stages that we might have missed before? Because there were 3 different developmental stages at the time. There was, of course, the steam engine, and then there was electricity, and then there was internet. And we were still stuck on electricity as a country. We might know this, but I was like, okay, this fourth industrial revolution exists. Can we leapfrog the developmental stages and leverage 4IR to enhance and accelerate development in our continent? In this question, I found out that there's a project that's currently happening in Gqeberha and Port Elizabeth, And this project came from Nelson Mandela University. It was called Tanks at the time. And it was about how do you teach coding to learners without the use of computers, without the use of electricity, and prepare them for changing world. And that's when I got involved. I was like, how can I jump onto this? And this was a project that was being spearheaded by Professor Jean Greiling, who is actually head of Department of Computing Sciences at Nelson Mandela University. And I went to him and I said, I want to get involved in this. How can I get involved in impacting young people from any kind of background? And then I was the first official employee of Tangible Africa and led the project in expanding it across South Africa. My first job was to get it into 10 schools in South Africa. I've still not met that KPI, but it's been exciting to see that it's developed across the continent and even globally. But what is it that we do? Well, firstly, we demystify the concept of coding by defining it to learners as just a list of instructions that tell a computer what to do. Learners relate to a list of instructions every day, either at home or at school. They are doing that. And then we gamify the process and we make learning fun. So you'll see there's a picture of hopscotch there, because in that small picture, we can see computational thinking processes being done, such as decomposition, pattern recognition, algorithm design, and of course, abstraction. And then at the bottom of the picture, we see a classroom that is learning coding concepts, but there's no computer in sight. And we use physical tokens and a digital mobile app to do this. So the mobile app will have different challenges that the learners need to meet or solve. And then we have specialized physical tokens that have QR codes on them. And then you assemble them in a specific way, you scan them, and they execute the code. And we've even innovated it for visually impaired and blind learners. So they're using 3D printed levels, 3D printed puzzle pieces, and they don't even need, some of them don't even need a device in front of them. Because we need to not only demystify what coding is, but making it accessible to anyone. So that's just to give a brief background on what it is that I'm doing. And the next few slides will speak about the integration of artificial intelligence in all of this. So studying industrial psychology, of course, at Nelson Mandela University has prepared me for the different shifts that happen in industry in multiple sectors. And to summarize this, we'll see that technology has gone from being a tool to being a teammate. And that's its evolving role in the world of AI. So early on, we assumed that AI would just simply enhance technical skills and automation, that the guys working in the line, the blue collar guys at VW, their jobs would be at risk because those technical skills would be changed or enhanced by AI, and more automation would exist. That means less human capital needed. And there was a shift in that perspective, especially in the rise of predictive AI and generative AI as well. We started realizing, oh, it can actually take on high skill roles. You were a copywriter before, and human creativity set you apart. And now artificial intelligence could be used for copywriting. You were a designer, you were a web developer. And the advancements in this technology have allowed it to replace or work in those roles. So the new landscape now is, how do you merge these different technical skills with human creativity, especially around what soft skills look like to us? So for me, in my daily work, when it comes to using artificial intelligence, I'm creating presentations all the time. In my role as engagement manager, head of just been project manager for Tangible, I have to realize what is the context when going to a different country. Currently, you might say it's dark in my room. It is 6:30 a.m. and I'm sitting in Dallas, and we've presented our innovation And we're not presenting it as, hey, we're an African project, please help us so that we can fund Africa. We're saying we have a solution that is allowing learners to think about coding in a different way and to think about problem solving in a totally different way, especially in the era of artificial intelligence, of how can they ask the right questions? How can we look at new careers such as prompt engineering as something you can do and something you can study? Asking the right questions, getting the right solutions, and then implementing the solutions. And that's what I had learned in studying industrial psychology, in studying labor law, and understanding that job fit and organization fit and role fit is so important in leveraging AI tools. And in my specific space, in leading a team, I have to get into meetings and have the team know, hey, this is not ChatGPT that you're speaking to. You're speaking to Jackson, but Jackson has leveraged what ChatGPT can do so that I could draw up an agenda and not spend 30, 40 minutes in drawing up this agenda and editing it to look cool. But I've spent 5 minutes in giving you guys this agenda, and I can start thinking creatively about what is it that I want to get out of this session. Hey, I've used these different icebreakers for the last 3 meetings. Artificial intelligence, give me 5 examples of icebreakers that could set up a meeting like this for my team. So it's not just about thinking, oh, how can I write proposals or how can I develop a website, but how can I make a 45-minute meeting engaging for my team? Instead of spending an hour and a half researching it, I can find out in 5 to 10 minutes. But my input into artificial intelligence is really what separates the output from someone who is not experiencing what I am in the daily world of work. So when it comes to leveraging tools like ChatGPT, Gemini, or Canva, which has now become more artificially intelligence empowered, it's about saying, how does it maximize my time and what I do on the daily? And I've also encouraged my team to take on these technologies so that they can be in the front foot of innovation. Perhaps, I don't assume all of them are going to stay with us for 10, 15, 20 years. So how can they have themselves as a competitive edge to walk into a room and say, or to walk into a company and say, listen, this new technology, I'm well versed in it, and I can help you guys navigate around it. So that's just where the new landscape is. So it's not just a replacement for human creativity and empathy, but it's about how do we as humans actually provide information to it and help it learn. But there's also a risk, right? There's ethics that we need to look at, as well as confidentiality and people's privacy. And that's where our work comes in to ensure, especially I'm currently pursuing a master's in business, and the academics sitting in the room, I can't imagine how assignments have changed, that someone you've been speaking to for the last 2 years is using words they've never used before in an assignment or in real life. And what does that look like when I can fill up information and just ask ChatGPT to create a bio for me with links? And that's spaces that people in education need to navigate. And without just ignoring the tool, you can't just say, shove AI down the pipe, you guys need to go think, because there was a time calculators were the innovation that made mathematicians go crazy. Like, look at all these kids using these calculators, and we can do a lot of examples about that. But the idea of AI in these kind of tools is the hammer and the nail is not going to build the bridge. It is how we as humans use those tools in order to build the world that we live in. And that's why the humanities matter. As the world becomes more digital, as the world becomes less interactive, where Jackson is not even in the room, and I'm thinking, oh man, I can't imagine the conversations that are going to happen after this. But I did not miss out on this call. I was able to be present. And this is why we want to leverage these technologies. And I may end up speaking to Thomas about this and ask, how did it go? Can I end up meeting with the rest of my panelists just to discuss what opportunities exist in their space, especially what are they doing for young people? Maybe our Coding for Mandela tournament that reached 32,000 learners in one day can be in the Daily Maverick next year. Should I be shamed by plugging ourselves in so unashamedly? I'm teasing, maybe I should move on to the next slide. But in leveraging those technologies, I've found that artificial intelligence has become a catalyst for the creative work I get to do. Because initially, it was just supposed to be technical work. But we are making proposals globally, whether in the US, in Europe, in Asia, or in Africa. And a proposal is not something that you can just copy and paste. What is the context of the different countries we're coming to? There's standard critical learning points that the American Department of Education wants to understand. I have no clue what those are all about. And instead of spending 3 months researching them, we were able to use artificial intelligence to frame what is our approach in the United States. We thought, hey, this amazing digital revolution is happening in America, and they don't want a tool that removes kids from digital spaces or computers. And the parents in Dallas were telling us, listen, our kids are in front of the screen too much. We need something different. We need them going out again. We need them doing something tangible again, in learning practically again. So understanding that and aligning our approach to those needs, I can't tell you the benefit we've seen as an organization. And that's just what I've been doing. The rest of the team has also been doing that. And that's why in the last 3 years, we've been able to expand to all these different countries and all these different continents. But it's not artificial intelligence that's doing the thinking for us. We've allowed it to automate certain things so that we can have greater focus on strategy and the big ideas and the dreams that we want to achieve as not only a university, but also as a proudly South African project that is relevant globally and not relevant as just a place holder or window dressing, but saying this innovation can transform the world. And that's what we're finding and what we're doing. So when it comes to equipping learners for the AI era, we're blending AI with creativity. And as I spoke about earlier, computational thinking aspect of what we do is allowing for learners to understand how do you solve complex problems by using critical thinking and being adaptive to what's happening. Our work, learners have to play in groups, they have to communicate, they have to collaborate, and that prepares them for the working world where they're not sitting in silos, but in a tech-driven future, more human collaboration is needed. And we're breaking that mold of learners who just have to sit in front of a paper and write it by themselves, by coming together in circles and communicating and collaborating. And that's how we're charting the future. As earlier stated, I'm seeing myself frame a first world Africa. And this first world Africa, we're going to have to collaborate with technologies in more than just automation, but in ways of innovating. And understanding that you always have to learn. When we train teachers who graduated 30, 20 years ago, and now that the coding and robotics curriculum from grade R to grade 9 has been gazetted, they need to shift. They need to understand how will we meet our learners where they currently are. And we need to leverage what humans can bring in order to guide artificial intelligence's development in a responsible manner, in an ethical manner, and not to limit the thinking by being afraid of what new technology does, but to imagine how the future roles that we do can be enhanced and shaped by the different technologies, so in our team, we're using Asana, and Asana is allowing us to collaborate daily wherever anyone is. and you won't understand how it's boosted our impact in the work that we do. So I'm hoping that the young people who are, I shouldn't call them young people, I'm part of that as well, but the students who are really finding out how do you navigate in this world, go in there with an open mind. But artificial intelligence will not replace you. You are the person who is going to use it to navigate and shape the world we live in currently. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure if you saw the students' faces when you were talking about how students use AI. It's currently a bit of a sore topic in every classroom, but we are navigating it. We're navigating it. And I think what we are trying to figure out is how do we actually get students to do that kind of higher, more critical level of use of the AI instead of expecting the AI to do the thinking for them. So we kind of, that's where I think the way we're butting heads. Not necessarily don't use it, but how to use it, I think is where we are trying to find our footing. But this is so thank you for opening also that avenue for discussion later. I'm sure they'll have much to say. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
I'm glad that I couldn't see them, so I didn't feel too bad. But yes, the lecturers and the student bodies are going to have a lot on their hands.
No, we'll figure it out. All right, thank you very much. And then our next speaker, Mr. Jonathan van der Walt. He's a visual artist here at Nelson Mandela University, a curator based in Gqeberha. He has received his Bachelor in Technology degree in Fine Art cum laude and Masters in Fine Art Sculpture. He's born from Nelson Mandela University. He holds a certificate and entrepreneurial award from the South African Creative Industry Incubation Program. He's currently an associate lecturer in the Department of Visual Arts at Nelson Mandela and a gallery manager and curator of the department's Bird Street Gallery. If you haven't been there, do try to go, where he's facilitated over 60 exhibitions. He's a member of the Digital Hub's Humanities Hub and sits on the board of EPCAC or ATEC, aiding in the promotion and support of emerging artists in the Eastern Cape. He has experiences as a practicing artist with a passionate interest in combination of 3D technologies in conjunction with traditional sculpting methods. And as such, oversees the 3D printing lab for the School of Visual and Performing Arts. He's an artist in residence at William Humphreys Art Gallery in Kimberley for 2024, exhibiting his second solo exhibition From the Woods to the Soil at the culmination of the residency in March, April 2024. He has exhibited in numerous group exhibitions nationally and internationally. His work is in the collections of the Nelson Mandela Metropolitan Art Museum, William Humphreys Art Gallery, and Lucian Benetton Imago Mundi collection. Please help me welcome Jonathan. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabby. Yeah, thank you for having me. Just while Thomas is setting up here, just feeling the pressure of the 15-minute time slot. So as Gabby introduced, I am a lecturer in visual arts. So there's a lot that echoes Jackson's presentation, but obviously within a different sphere. So it was quite a nice flow of proceedings. Okay. So yeah, let me just give a little insight first. The way I've approached this, I'm not going to speak directly about AI up front. I'm setting the basis of an understanding of the workspace of AI within the arts based off of developments in the discipline of arts throughout history. So it touches on those industrial revolution aspects of the technological advancements through various industrial revolutions and how the space of art adjusted within those spaces. Let me just see if it is working. Okay. So my actual practice when in my practice-based research doesn't involve AI primarily, but I use it in certain processes, in ideation and in experimentation. But my actual practice is in the digital sphere and the traditional sculpting methods. And so I utilize 3D printing and digital modeling. So there's a bit of an overlap, but it's not exactly AI specific. Just to start it off, Walter Benjamin in his book, The Work of Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction, in response to the development of the photography, which was seen as a huge enemy of painting at the time, said, the history of every art form shows critical epochs in which a certain art form aspires to effects which could be fully obtained only with a changed technical standard, that is to say, in a new art form. So it just sets the tone for this discussion. And one of these points in art history that's always been tumultuous and has always been a problem space is this idea of craft versus art. And those developments assist in understanding this, where we are now in AI. So craft often has these connotations of inferior to art, superiority. It's very technical. It doesn't come with a lot of thought. It's just technique and process. And obviously there's other aspects of like decoration and our connotation with craft markets and African craft markets or the commercial space. Whereas art has this idea that it's a visionary, it's a space where original things are generated by a solitary genius, and it's very emotive and expressive and superior to that of craft. Now, these developed centuries ago, based off certain developments that separated the idea of craftsmanship and theory, which eventually then became, in the Middle Ages through guilds, craftsmanship was institutionalized, where there was a control on quality, training, and the trade of crafts. And in that time, painters were grouped with cabinet makers and paper makers, and sculptors were grouped with stonemasons and bricklayers, just to show you this idea of craftsmanship and making being associated with manual labor at the time. The Renaissance shift in the 16th century then elevated, or 15th and 16th century, elevated painting and sculpture to the superior form of expression. And it saw these artists alongside intellectuals such as philosophers and scientists. Then came the Enlightenment, where it valued individualism, originality, and a rebellion against traditional beliefs. So that further put craft on this lower tier as opposed to art. Then came the first Industrial Revolution, where now the machine actually challenged the workforce or the physicality of the craftsman. And because of machines being able to work tirelessly, it was a fear that it would replace this making space. And at the time, the invention that would have affected the fine arts at that time was the printing press, which allowed for dissemination of an original drawing in multiples. And that caused its own conflict at the time. And then the fine arts was actually formalized in sponsored academies. So that further placed fine art over craft, broadening that difference. In the second Industrial Revolution came the camera, which was then the start of photography. And that was one of the biggest upsets at the time. And people were declaring painting as being dead, and that nothing of meaning can be created from a machine, and a human and machine can't work together. But the camera itself, as most technologies or advancements or innovations, aren't a sudden spark that happens. It's normally a slow development on top of existing understanding. So the photographic camera was developed from a natural phenomenon known as the camera obscura, where light passes through a lens or a pinhole onto a surface, creating an upside-down image. So that didn't need any mechanical machine or mechanical device at all to make that happen. It was just a natural phenomenon of light. And it was only the camera that allowed the chemical, once they had found the chemical process, to put that onto a paper, became photography. And then if you look into this camera obscura, there was artists even such as Da Vinci, but even centuries before that, that were aware of this and used it for tools for solving their actual drawings and proportions. And so the solitary idea of this genius artist had some form of technological advancement or a tool to assist their making. There was even a recent documentary, quite controversial, where a computer geek inventor, Tim Jennison, went on a quest to try create a Dutch master's painting by Jan Vermeer using modern technology and not having painted at all in his life. And that was because he had noted that there was a mention that this artist used the camera obscura. And in that documentary, he used these technologies, and you can see in the image there's a mirror that is reflecting the light of another image, and he can overlay that over the painting and in a way trace a painting with color tone, which was quite controversial. And it challenges that idea of originality and authenticity in the art space. And here you can see an example. Let me get it right. On the left here, we've got the original painting, and on the right you have a painting by Tim Jennison, who has never painted. So you can see why that was controversial. Soon after the invention of photography, well, not soon, after a couple of decades later, the idea of the ready-made entered the world of art, which was the dematerialization of art, where Marcel Duchamp was the sort of father figure of this movement. It's the taking of objects that already exist and putting them into new contexts, and then renaming them or reclaiming them as your original art piece. In that way, it started to change. It started this wave that eventually influenced a couple of other spaces, such as pop art, conceptual art, and appropriation art, where the idea starts to become more important than the actual making of an object. So here Andy Warhol was one of the key figures of the pop art movement, and you can see that adaptation of an everyday item becoming something almost celebrated, or something fine art, and breaking that low art, high art. So it started to merge the tiers of where art seemed to be and where craft was. And you can see there, he starts to allude to this idea of authorship, where he says, let other people decide whether it's good or bad. You just keep making. At the same time, in literary development, there was a theorist, Roland Barthes, who influenced the art industry or art history at the time. And he had the title, The Death of the Author, where he highlighted that the identity and the intentions of the author should not limit the interpretation of the text. And in visual art, obviously, and semiotics, we look at the text as visual as well, not just characters or words. And in that, the reader, not the author, holds the key to understanding a work. And therefore, the creation of the work, from the artist's perspective, the artist dies, and then it becomes the viewer's item to experience. And this was another development at that same time that would eventually lead to this, the development of conceptual art movement, with Joseph Beuys being one of the key figures there. And he stated that the art object was no more than a byproduct of leading to one's ideas, or leading one's ideas to action. So he built this on Duchamp's theories and infused it with social and political commentary. And he openly stated that anyone can become an artist. So stepping out of the visual art space, many of you might not be aware of these art history developments, and you might see in contemporary art someone pasting a banana on a wall, or those moments where something happens in contemporary art that makes the news because it's so ridiculous. Or there's spaces where you go, my kid could draw that. Why is that selling for millions? So these type of movements and these developments provide a bit of insight as to why art is the way it is currently. So it challenges that traditional artist role, rather as a social act. He even spoke about social sculpture. And there were two female artists that became key figures in this analysis of authorship, and they created the appropriation art movement, where they literally copied other artists' work in the same medium. So screen print or painting, they would, Elaine Sturtevant would recreate Andy Warhol's famous works, and then title it Andy Warhol's work by Elaine Sturtevant. So it became this challenge on what is originality, a challenge on what is authenticity. And there were a couple of other artists at the time. Even Andy Warhol would actually commission her to fix some of his damaged works at some point. So they had a positive relationship, as she had with many of the other artists she copied. Yeah, it's an example of her painting, or her screen print, sorry, of Warhol, one of Warhol's famous screen prints of Marilyn Monroe. Another artist at the time was Sherry Levine, who was a photographer, and she would photograph other people's photographs and then present them as her own photographs. So you can see the two there in her title, acknowledging the previous photographer, Walker Evans. So these were very controversial, but also became very influential in the sort of understanding of where art is. And this development of the idea of craftsmanship, you can see from the 30s, a craftsman must know exactly what he or she wants to make before it is made, and that an artist need not stress this distinction. So that was a sort of definition of craftsmanship at that time. David Pye's, which still holds very true today, and a lot of writers, contemporary writers, still reference David Pye in his Nature and the Art of Workmanship. He emphasized the integration of skill, creativity, and material knowledge, viewing true craftsmanship as encompassing both functional and aesthetic. So his is a lot more open-ended, that allows this idea of technology to be woven into that definition. And he spoke of this idea of workmanship of risk versus workmanship of certainty. So in the space of arts and crafts, it then brought craft and art together, in that you are both working at a risk. You don't know the outcome. Anything can happen. You can hit a grain in the wood and it snaps a piece off. You can, and that goes, it's true for the digital space as well. As you're working with different softwares, different spaces, a lot of it is still a similar process of work, just with a different medium. Yeah, sorry, that was about the transfer there to the digital space. And more contemporary and more significantly, Glenn Adamson works off these ideas of David Pye. And he speaks of craft not as an institution or as a classification of objects, but rather as transcending disciplines and existing in motion. He states that craft is a way of doing things. It is an analysis of an approach, an attitude, a process, or a habit of action. So in that way, art cannot live without craft and vice versa. They are mutually beneficial to each other. And now we fast forward to contemporary artists. And here's, I mean, these are the more flamboyant artists, the ones that make the news, where you're in a space where they've got craftspeople that make their work for them, because they've had these developments in art history that have allowed the making space to not matter too much. It's more about the idea of what that artwork is. But they've become very confident in that. And a lot of people don't know this distinction. So Damien Hirst has a series of spot paintings of color. And he was once quoted saying, "The best spot painting you can have by me is one by Rachel Howard," who was his favorite assistant at the time. Here is actually the artist who taped a banana to a wall. He says, "I don't design, I don't paint, I don't sculpt. I absolutely never touch my works. It only takes a minute to have an idea. After that, I don't do anything." So you can see this idea of the arrogance of finding that loophole in that space. Consequently, someone actually took his banana off a wall and ate it and then called that a new work. So it can get into a very messy loophole there, or rabbit hole. So given this concept-driven move from artist as craftsman to artist as director, the artist now turns to the skills and expertise of craftspeople to make their ideas come to life. Because a lot of the time now, you still want the artwork to be very well made, but you've never painted, you've never sculpted in your own life. You've just been in a grown up with a conceptual understanding of art. So you have spaces like foundries and fabricators who make your work for you. Nigel Schofield is an example in the UK where he works for other artists, and he's got a huge list on his website of those that he makes work for. Here's an example of one of Damien Hirst's works being made in a foundry. Obviously, one aspect of this is that you can't make that by yourself. It is a humongous bronze, but the other side of it is that the original sculpture at a small scale was made by a craftsperson at a foundry. So Damien Hirst had the idea. So it just shows you this relationship between the craftsperson and the artist. And it happens here in South Africa as well. This is the 9-meter Nelson Mandela bronze at the Union Buildings. It also involved a lot of digital collaboration with 4 different foundries to create the work itself. And then when you get into the digital space, it's been received with a lot of resistance in the same way as photography did. So even though art has opened up, there was a lot of pushback when these developments happened. And it's the craftspeople at the end of the day that end up being able to adapt to these technological advances quicker than artists because they're working with it without the confines. So Glenn Adamson mentions this as this inferiority being a strength for this understanding of craft, because craft's marginal status frees it from the constraints of what high art likes to dictate. And in that way, the craftspeople are actually free to experiment with new techniques, new machines, and so learn new ways of doing things before artists catch up to them. And then this just highlights, as we get to the understanding of sort of the disruptor of AI in contemporary times, the role of the maker remains central to this craft and making process in the digital era. And the quality of that final product still depends on the maker's judgment, dexterity, and care for that product they're making, which then echoes David Pye's statements earlier. This example of the resistance to the digital comes in the form of obviously Pixar and all those technologies that developed in the digital animation space. And when Pixar won an Academy Award in 1986, there was a lot of backlash from a sort of art community. And the co-founder of Pixar, Edwin Catmull, said, at the time of this award, most traditional artists were afraid of the computer. They did not realize that the computer was merely a different tool in the artist's kit, but instead they perceived it as a type of automation that might endanger their jobs. So that shows even a repeat of that response from 100 years prior and the introduction of photography. And this is evident in examples where you're only now seeing a look back on artists that here in 1977, Manfred Moore was using robotics and coding to draw. So he would put in codes that would then develop these computer-based processes to draw these different images. Thijs Willems speaks about this idea of digital craftsmanship and this working with the digital material in the creation of objects and crafting new work practices, not just objects. So it's the way in which professionals use digital tools to collaborate, prototype, and refine their designs. And that's how you can see this opening up to how AI is incorporated in a lot of workplace processes and actually tools. So when we get to this sort of a fear or this apprehension towards generative models in AI, you can start to see how these fears can actually be viewed differently by previous developments in art history. So obviously with these models that create creative things from a data set, you can see an example of generative AI here. Oh, it's actually not. Okay, but you'll get an idea. So they use these data sets of other images that exist online, and from that, with word prompts, can develop new images very quickly. So this it's become a part of artists increasingly view AI as a partner in this creative process rather than just a tool. But even without you knowing, if you're using digital software, it's already creeping into your softwares anyway. This was a digital artist that won a digital art competition based off an AI prompted artwork, which caused a lot of controversy back in 2022, even though he did label it Jason M. Allen via Midjourney, which is one of these platforms you can generate this from. But an interesting thing to think about, it's not just the images or you generating a new image that's the controversy or the question. It's also the fact on what are the ethical implications of that data set and those images it's using as inspiration. And this was one artist who reflected on that, saying there's no ethical way to use the major AI image generators. All of them are trained on stolen images, and all of them are built for the purpose of de-skilling, disempowering, and replacing real human artists. So that's a very aggressive response, but it's based off the fact that she herself saw her artworks used as inspiration for new artworks. So when you consider these ethical implications, you look at is the replication of styles and compositions with precision, challenging originality, authorship, and authenticity. If an AI system creates a work based on existing art, who holds the rights to that? And if an AI algorithm creates a piece of art, who is considered the author? The artist who programmed the AI itself, or both. And you can see how these questions are yet again a repeat on those same authorship questions we had at the last development of conceptual art and the previous Industrial Revolution. So here's an example of how in Adobe you can see these tools adjusting into your workplace, into your workspace, into your toolkit that are already seamlessly involved now. There's also NVIDIA's Gauguin, which, as you can see on the left, you indicate what substance goes where and what you want where, and then it generates based off those prompts what that scene should look like. Another example of this AI in the art world is this by Obvious, which sold at Christie's for 8 million rand. It used an algorithm that had a generator and a discriminator. And in that system, it was fed a data set of 15,000 portraits painted between the 14th century to the 20th century. And the generator had to just create a new image based off that data set. And then the discriminator had to try to spot the difference between the human one that they had in the data set and the one generated by the generator. And as soon as the discriminator was fooled as to what was real, that became the final product that then was exhibited. Other artists have also used AI within robotics as well. And So Guangchung collaborated with a robotic arm named Doug, which became a creative partner in her process because it was programmed to actually mimic her drawing style. And so they both end up learning in real time from each other as they paint the same painting. So it shows you this potential for collaboration in the space of AI. Refik Anadol is another top artist in this AI space where he uses archives and public accessible archives, and he works with technology and science with regards to neuroscience, and he develops new models and ways of using a data set to create artworks that become like these living artworks that are projected onto buildings. For example, this one was Melting Memories, where he was inspired by his father who was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. So he was trying to find this idea of what memory means. So he worked with neurosciences scientists on what the brain does when it forgets. And he used that data to actually, with the generative AI systems, to create visual forms that would move to show this loss of memory as a sort of nod to what he was dealing with. So I think just to wrap it up, the artist's role in shaping AI is to be that innovator, to not let it be the innovator. We have the opportunity to shape the future of AI by experimenting with its possibilities and challenging these limitations to ensure that it becomes a tool and not a replacement. And there are a lot of artists that are doing that. It is a medium, just as photography and video were that seem to be this fearsome enemy, but become something part of this rich substance that is art history. And then, as you can see with those last artists, it's a space for collaboration. So future of AI is likely to be defined by these collaborations between artists, technologists, scientists, and researchers to drive innovation and ensure that AI evolves in ways that enhance and rather than diminish human creativity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Stay. Okay. No, it's fine. Sorry. I was going to say you can stay up there, but it's fine if you want to come down. All right. Thank you. Before I introduce our next speaker, I would just like to acknowledge that our former DVC, Professor Cheryl Foxcroft, has also joined us online. Good afternoon, Prof. Thank you for joining us. And then our last speaker is Styli Charalambous, who I'm sure all of you have all gone and checked out to see what Daily Maverick is and are going to be listening to him with that knowledge in mind. He's co-founded the Daily Maverick in 2009 while navigating industry disruptions and the country's turbulent politics. As founding CEO and publisher, Styli helped grow the Daily Maverick from a 5-person startup to now with more than 100 full-time staff, reaching 10 million monthly unique visitors with 27,000 voluntary paying members. He's passionate about leadership and innovation, focusing on new revenue models, product technology, and membership in news. In 2021, he was awarded South Africa's Top Journalism Award for courage and integrity for his shaping role in the Daily Maverick success. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for the introduction. Sorry for the technical delay there. I'm going to be sharing a little bit today about my journey from the other side of campus, being the faculty, the commerce faculty, into the world of humanities and leading a journalism outfit, which was very well marketed earlier by the prof. So thank you very much for that bit of marketing. As we like to say, Daily Maverick, there's only 2 types of people in the world: those who love Daily Maverick and those who've yet to start reading Daily Maverick. So we appreciate the help to getting everyone to the first place. So a little bit about where are we? Okay. There we go. Daily Maverick, just very quickly, we launched in 2009 with 5 people. in a small boardroom in Johannesburg with a very noisy air conditioning unit. We've since grown in that time. We have about 100 people now, and as mentioned, we reach about 10 million monthly unique visitors to the website. And in 2020, in the middle of the pandemic, we did something which was called Batshit Crazy, and we launched a weekly print newspaper as well, when the whole world said that the end of print was nigh and couldn't survive, and it's still going and still growing. A little bit about me. As I mentioned, I started off training as an accountant. I worked in Johannesburg, moved to London, worked in the banking sector there, and decided that after 7 years of studying and working as a professional, I realized what I didn't want to do for the rest of my life. And so I had to start figuring out, well, what is it that I want to do, and work from there. And so when people ask me, how did I end up at Daily Maverick? How did I end up leading or co-founding a news publication? My first answer, and the honest answer, is I lost a bet. So another fellow Nelson Mandela University alumni and good friend of mine was actually the seed funder for Daily Maverick. We were working on another startup together. That didn't go anywhere. I turned to him and said, "Hey, buddy, what else have you got going, cooking?" And says, "Well, he gave these journalists and editors some money to get this thing going, and maybe you want to meet up with them because they could certainly use some business experience to help them get off the ground, raise some money, and see if it goes anywhere." And so that was in August of 2009, and this is my first job in media. And so 15 years later, the wild ride is still continuing. I think if I had to think about the real value and the things that I've introduced into the organization, I think it's been the marriage of having studied business science and introducing strategic frameworks, strategic thinking, and where the two combine, where they work well together. And I think very few organizations and media organizations have benefited from that kind of infusion and marriage of science and the humanities together. And I think that's often where both sides of the equation have fallen flat in the past. And we see this with accountants and lawyers and auditors who've been caught up in state capture because ethics was just the last 30 minutes of an exam and an afterthought when it came to thinking about the implications of their actions and their work. And conversely, we've seen how industries like journalism and some of the creative arts have been disrupted because we haven't taken things like strategy, innovation into account when thinking about the future. And so I think that's what we've done really well, especially in the last few years. I want to share a story about something that happened in 1997 that's relevant to today's discussion and today's conversation. Also realized that most of you were not born in 1997, and so this makes me feel very, very, very old. But at the time, something big happened in the world of sport, in the world of chess, in the world of AI. And for the very first time, the world champion, Grandmaster Garry Kasparov, lost in a 6-match tie to IBM's DeepMind. And this kind of rocked the world of chess at the time because, and Kasparov was one of the first people to say that this was going to be the end of chess as we know it. It was going to die. What was the point of playing chess if the machines could now beat us like this? But something really interesting happened after that, is that chess got more popular. Players improved. A few things happened. New strategies started emerging as people were getting better and realizing there were new moves and new strategies that hadn't been used before. All of this knowledge was starting to become more accessible to many more people around the world, right? And especially when the internet became more prevalent as well. And everyone from recreational players to the professional players were now getting access to better training. And so the standards of the game were improving. And so we were seeing now more grandmasters than ever before, with higher ratings than ever before. And the benefit of that is that chess has never been more popular. 100 million people play on chess.com, which is an incredible number. And if you think about the initial knee-jerk reaction to the loss against the machines, we're in a far off better place. And so just sharing this as an example of what might happen, what could happen if we take on the benefits of what we can glean from the likes of artificial intelligence. The news industry has already been suffering the impact of AI for a long time. And so as luck would have it, Daily Maverick was born right at the time the global disruption of the news industry was really starting to be felt across the world as an industry. We had managed, when I say we, the people before me, but I'm being kind, they had managed to stave off disruption for a long time. And that was because most media organizations were protected by licenses that you needed in order to broadcast, or the huge cost of running a printing press. And so that kept competitors at bay. It kept disruption at bay for 60, 70, 80 years for a lot of organizations, which is unheard of because every industry gets disrupted, every company gets disrupted. But because of these protections and these moats around the news industry, we were, our colleagues were protected from disruption, to the extent that when it came for the entire industry, and it came from the entire industry globally in a short space of time. And so big tech, the AI, the algorithms that they had, the access to resources, and so the business model of news was disrupted and has been struggling to recover ever since. And so it's within that context that we were born, and had to figure out, how do we sustain ourselves when bigger players from outside of the industry are able to take the majority of the revenue that was once only for news organizations. So how do we use AI at Daily Maverick? So we have launched AI-generated summaries. These, in responding to the attention deficit that now exists because of the information deluge that is available. So we're able to generate AI-generated summaries of every story that we've written. All right. And so if you go to the summaries, you'll see that the ability to just flick through summaries and doom scroll to your pleasure or displeasure, whatever you want to call it. There's also the opportunity to then dive deeper and more deeply into each of those. We also use it in a number of different parts of the production process, from transcribing interviews to editing audio and video, where you can just, simply replace every in an interview and just delete it, which happens quite a lot. And in a number of different parts of the production process as well. So everything from what you see on the front end to improving the back end. We're looking at languages. We're looking at ways that we can use AI to essentially get to our goals a lot quicker and more efficiently, and potentially launch new products and services that can help improve the quality and the quantity of our journalism as it moves to becoming more and more personalized in this day and age. And we think of it as tools. Well, I like what Jackson referred to it earlier as teammates, right? To help us unlock more time for creativity, and to take away some of the more laborious tasks as well that exist. When we look at frameworks of where we want to go to, whether we're looking at launching a new division or launching a new project, we often talk about using the Ikigai framework, which is finding the intersection of what you love doing, or a vision for yourself, or a project, whether this service or where is actually there's a real world need for this thing, whether we have the resources or we're good enough to be able to deliver on this, and whether there's a financial model for this, right? How we can sustain it. Like, is it through advertising? Is it through grant funding? Is it through reader revenue supported memberships? And so this framework I thought would be quite useful to share with you if you haven't seen it. It's really good. You can use it in a personal capacity. You can use it in a business context, whether it's for a division or product, whatever it is. And I thought it'd be useful today because where AI and then its various different forms, and often we conflate AI with larger language models these days, because that's probably the most popular use case of AI, is that it allows you to significantly improve what you're good at. And I've just used the icon for ChatGPT here, and you can replace it with Claude or Perplexity or any other kind of large language model that's easily accessible. And so what it allows us to do is to really upskill or to enhance and augment our skills of what we're good at. And so that's how I like to think about using this. And this kind of also aligns with what Jackson was saying as a teammate, as a way to take away the mundane tasks so that you can unlock time for creativity, or get very quickly up to speed on something that you don't really have an in-depth knowledge of. And so I thought this was a good way to visualize that as well. And then in terms of scenario planning, when we look at the future and where our industry might go or our products and services might go, we use this technique called the futures cone to think about what the future might hold. Now, as humans, we like to think very linearly, right? We think that the developments that might come will come in a very sort of smooth and linear fashion, right? And that's the probable future that you see up there. But what we need to consider when we think about the world and how it might evolve and what might come next is we need to expand our list of scenarios in terms of what is not just probable, but what is plausible. And so that helps us think of different scenarios that might happen outside of a probable future. And then you think about, well, what is a preferable future, right? And a preferable future for us as an organization is one that is not within the cone of a probable future, because that's where everyone is thinking of going, right? That's where everyone is thinking the world is going to develop. That's where most people are thinking the needs are going to stay the same, or how do they change? And then also to play around with some really wild card scenarios, because you need extreme examples, extreme scenarios to plan for them, so that when something like a pandemic hits and you can no longer be in person, then how do you respond to that as an organization, as a team, putting out a printed product or a digital only product, or how team meetings are held, or, if you don't have electricity for 4 to 8 hours a day, for example. So Futures Cone is a great way of thinking about these potential scenarios, and then also especially relevant in a time of AI, where there are just so many new possibilities that are available to allow us to experiment, to know how to innovate and iterate, and to test ideas and hypotheses. And so it's important to build these into our workflows, into making time for these kind of strategic long-term planning discussions. And so this is just a tool that maybe might make sense to you now in your world, or maybe later on, but that's it's been really helpful for us to expand our thinking on something like that. And so that just kind of brings anything that is possible into the mix, and to consider that. And so finally, I think or close to finally, is as you sit here and we debate the question of, what does the future look like for you with a humanities background? Will there be jobs for you, especially in a country like South Africa, which already struggles with high unemployment challenges? And so, my response is to you that we've already seen some jobs being lost in the news industry I'm not going to sugarcoat it. We're an industry that has lost, but this was even before the explosion of AI onto the scene in South Africa. We've lost 70% of our professional workforce in journalism. And so these are challenges that we have to deal with. Right? How do we create new jobs in this environment? How do you as young people look forward to doing this? And it's going to be hard, right? That's the bad news. The good news is it's always been hard. And so you just now have the ability to lean into these tools, which are freely accessible. The democratization of these kinds of tools is both a good thing and a bad thing. We think about the impact of mis and disinformation, what is possible as we see elections around the world taking place. But it also means that smaller organizations or medium-sized organizations, as we consider ourselves today, can use these kinds of tools to be even better and to compete with much bigger organizations than ourselves. But that also means that you, as an individual, can also use these tools to upskill, to learn, to be able to augment your current skill sets, and so that you can be more competitive and that you can go out into the world and use these tools to your advantage to either land yourself that job or to create a new job that doesn't yet exist without the need for employment in many cases. So I realize that you guys are probably all very adept at using these tools already and are submitting probably every piece of homework or assignment using these tools, right? Yeah, no, sorry, your secret's safe. But when ChatGPT really exploded onto the scene, you can imagine that there was a lot of anxiety, there was a lot of worry from the industry, the journalism industry, which had just still going through this massive disruption and feeling the impact of it, right? And and we'd barely survived this big, massive disruption, and now this next wave was coming in. And so I had to, as the CEO of the organization, write to my colleagues and to kind of explain, this is how we are going to be working with these tools going forward, right? This big wave is coming in, and we've got two choices here. You can either learn how to surf, or you can hold your breath. And holding our breath didn't work well the first time around. And so we were encouraging people to experiment with these tools, to get proficient with them, to learn how to spot the mistakes, to learn how to spot the plagiarism, to learn how to spot the ways in which these things work, so that when we see others do it, that we can be aware of it, but also to improve the way that we work, because it can make us faster, it can make us better, it can give every young journalist for whom English is not a first language the opportunity to have a dedicated managing editor working with them to sculpt the story, right? We're not encouraging people to go out and just ask it to write it without any thought, but we're saying go out into the field, interview people, take notes, come back, have an idea for an angle, and put that into the machine and ask it, like, these are my notes. This is the angle I think that could work. How could help me with the first draft? And this is an article of mine that was previously published. And so in that way, this becomes a personal assistant, everything from a research assistant to managing editor to having that personal interaction. And so that was our message to our colleagues, which was, learn how to surf this web because it's not going away. Don't be afraid of, or don't focus on all the negatives and the potential pitfalls, but rather look at the potential and the opportunity. And so that is my message to you. But because you're all young people and excited and ambitious, I don't need to give you that surfing lesson. You guys are probably already masters of it. So thanks very much.
Thank you very much. May I ask you to stay on stage? And Jonathan, can you please join? Huh? No, I'm gonna go. Sorry. We are going to open the floor for questions for our speakers and also for our online participants. You can also type your question in the chat and I will ask it for you. So can I, in the process, maybe take hands? Does anyone have any questions? Okay, we'll start. I'm sorry, I'm gonna point and give numbers now. My apologies. One, and then two with the hat. You number two now. And then the side, three with the glasses, four with the glasses. And then let's stop there. Let's do four. And then we'll do another round after that. Is that okay? All right. You can start, please. You can use a microphone. Yeah.
Hi. Sorry about that. I'm just trying to fix it. So my question is, since every industrial revolution had its power source and contributed towards catalyzing an economy, for example, the first one was wood, and it shifted economies from a handcraft to mechanics, and then second it started using fossil fuels. So what is fourth industrial revolution about, and what is it powering towards?
We'll take the four questions and then answer them at the end, if that's fine.
Apologies. Good day, everyone. My name is Paralaxen, and I would like to pose my question to Mr. Styli. Yes, the CEO of Daily Maverick. Mr. Styli, my question is that can AI truly replicate the investigative and the narrative qualities that human journalists bring?
Good afternoon. My name is Boitolo Mashetsi, and I have two questions. The first one is for Mr. Jackson Tshabalala. So you mentioned that communication is an integral element of human quality, learning how to communicate and painting an image in people, right? So, and I think personally that being able to communicate and convey your point clearly, it basically is a skill that is stored and can be learned, right? For example, when you go to a call center, you need to have a specific way of how to speak to your client. And you said it so easily that you need to learn how to communicate. But how does one get to do that? And where do they start and cultivate the skill? And the second one is directed to Mr. Styli. Thank you so much for introducing me to the concept of the future cone. So I just want to ask Wutsi how does one get to put an application in the following question that I'm going to ask you? And I think I have a way on how I'm going to start my assignment that is due in no time. So I just want to ask, putting this future cone concept into application, what do you think the world would look like in 2070 in terms of environmental management? Thank you.
Afternoon, everyone. I think my question is more directed to, I think it's Mr. van der Walt. During your presentation, we saw pictures of people who, took pictures of other people's arts and stuff. And now my question is, okay, with regard to trademarking and all of those things, was that not really like an issue, or was trademarking not a thing back then? Because you're basically taking someone's work and basically making it your own. Yeah, that's about it. Thank you.
Are we going to take this in a specific order? I remember the first question was about how AI is powered. Can I go ahead with that?
Yeah, you can go
Okay,
for it.
sure.
Appreciate it. So one of our big sponsors as Tangible is AWS and Communities. And AWS and Communities works where AWS has data centers. So these data centers across the world, work that we've done in Ireland, work that we've done in Cape Town, work that we're doing in South Korea, they are planted there. And AI is basically powered by electricity. So the industrial revolutions powered different things, right? Like the steam engine and electricity, but the internet powered information and communication, and artificial intelligence is powering productivity, creativity, and all these other things. But the literal power sources, it's either electricity, which you can use fossil fuels, nuclear power, hydropower. But these data centers consume significant energy. And of course, that's where the ethical considerations come in when I spoke about how do we manage this ethically when it comes to sustainability and efficient power sources, reducing environmental impact that's caused by AI. And some of the conversations are around that AI could help us help AI. And then people in environmentals and people in sciences could help with that. But yes, AI is powered by different power sources which already exist. But its work, especially with what NVIDIA has done, is improving its graphics chip so it can give better results in a quicker time, and also just for pixelation and for pictures and for creativity look better.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, the question was, can AI replace the work of investigative journalism? Yeah, the answer is no, and certainly not at this point in time. It can't replace it because, you know, the thinking, the strategic thinking, the editorial choices of what to investigate is still done by humans, by editors in conjunction with the journalists, but it certainly can help investigations, and it has, and we've used it in a number of different ways. So there are tools that help you go through huge amounts of data sets, help you find connections that are not only direct exact matches. You can find semantic relationships between different terms that might mean the same thing across huge data sets that just would be impossible for a journalist to read through all of that. And so it helps narrow down the field of where to go and look and to do more of the investigation. Also in data analysis, and being able to extract insights from data. Again, either someone may not have those skills, or you just might have too much information to go through. And so there's some really good tools, and they're improving all the time. And so this, the way that we see the role of AI in investigations is to help us get to the answer quicker. And to also help us potentially find more stories to investigate by being able to monitor and interrogate multiple data sources, open source intelligence data sources especially, and being able to interrogate that has certainly helped a lot of investigative outlets. But it's still not as well used as I would like it to be in our organization. But that's mostly because of the lack of, I guess, because of the challenges the industry has faced and the people we've lost. We don't have enough people in the industry to start with. And so being able to then train and develop people so that they can use all these tools as well is another side of the problem. But for the time being, absolutely not. There's parts of investigations that can be done by AI, but the overall, what you choose to cover, why you're covering that, the angle in which you use to cover, that's certainly still domain of humans.
Am I assuming the next one is about the communication?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Sorry, it sucks not being in the room. But yes, what I found personally is that there's so much that we do, especially as the engagement manager for our project. And when we speak about it, people really don't capture it. So I've had to learn that communication is an art form of sharing, receiving, and interrogating. Because most of the time we'd assume that the communication is when I'm speaking to you, but communication is happening when I'm listening. And communication is happening when I'm taking the information that exists and then interrogating it. I think Styli just mentioned the art of data analysis and just taking raw material in communication that would be just information and then understanding that raw material. So you're processing it and then responding, and then that's the output. And how do you become better at that? I don't know, this might be weird, but learn to talk to yourself. Learn to communicate with yourself. Spend time and share thoughts with yourself. Receive those thoughts, interrogate them, and then understand people. And this is why the humanities is so important. Understand, how does an idea impact you when you receive it? And assume how would it impact someone else. And the idea of the person sharing the communication. One of the conversations I've been having recently is, how do you share joy? How do you share experiences? How do you share ideas? And that's what communication is. It's about, we are limited by words. I don't think the words are expansive. I think they're a limitation. And we have to work very hard to ensure that the next person receives more than just your words, but the meaning and feeling behind it. So investigate it with yourself and then go study, either on YouTube or go take a short course on Udemy. There are strategic and structural ways of learning how to communicate better. Styli is right there. He communicates with 10 million people monthly. I'm sure he could give some tips.
All right. Okay. No, thank you. I think we're going to move on to I think the next question was on.
I think it was the part two.
Oh, yeah, it was Jonathan's.
70-year projection.
Was it 2070? He said, and what does the world look like with regards to environmental management? Was that specifically in response to like what the world's response to the climate crisis and what that looks like? Is that what you meant by environmental management?
Yes, also in terms of sustainability. Yeah, that's what I mean.
Cool. There's the opening line or the opening few pages of a book called Scary Smart, which came out a few years ago. It was written by a guy called Mo Gaudat, who used to run Google's AI lab. And the book Scary Smart is about the growing prevalence and developments in the world of artificial intelligence. And the scenario that he paints is, says the year is 20, I think he uses 2040 or somewhere around there, sitting around a campfire in the middle of the Nevada desert. And either one of two things have happened. Number one, AI has advanced so much and made our lives so much better that we are no longer needing to work and we're out here living our best lives. Scenario two is we're hiding. And so hiding from the machines. And this is the whole premise of the book, is that once the machines start creating machines, or AI starts creating AI, we don't really know what happens after that. Our human brains cannot conceive of that. And so how we develop AI from here onwards is really important. The training data that we give the AI to learn is also really important, because like any growing, learning thing, and we see humans, is that if we give them bad training data and we give them bad and poor examples, that we know what happens to humans if we do that, right? If we traumatize them, if we show poor examples of what it means to live a good life, for example. And so it's really important. But I'm hopeful that as these things become the smartest things that have ever been created, that the problems that we have now, which seem unsolvable, because we will not meet our climate crisis, we will not meet the levels that we need to in order to reverse the impact of the climate crisis. And so I think developments in AI are the only way that we can solve that. And so I'm hopeful that that is the case. I'm hopeful that if we create the AI that then creates the AI, and superintelligence is achieved, that it will have an understanding of things like morality and ethics, and be able to do what we can't in a way that is still not only sustainable, but is also kind to humans in a way that we weren't when we leapfrogged other animals on the food chain.
Okay, just the question on trademark and copyright. It's an extremely difficult space to navigate, especially within the creative industry. If we look, one thing is it's something that also doesn't happen at the time of the ethical issue or the copyright issue. It's something that decades later reflect back on to establish the new system or the new limitations or laws. So an example of that is, I mentioned the invention of the printing press that allowed the dissemination of artworks. There was an artist already in the 1400s, Albert Dürer, who developed a system to allow his prints to not get copied. But he developed it over time with signatures and whatnot to limit that dissemination for the originality of his limited prints, for example. But that is still being studied. There's a paper from, I think, within the last 10 years that was reflecting on his copyright trademark space, reflecting on how he handled it, and to better understand how to handle the creative copyright issues today. So that just puts in perspective, that's a 600-year difference. So in that time, in a traditional media space of painting, for example, like if it's AI copying a person's painting style, I feel it comes to those artists like that Crabapple who notified and was rejecting this notion of the adaptation of her style. But at the same time, it's a traditional medium that has been influenced. So style has been influenced by style, has been influenced by style. And you see that in the music industry now as well, with was it Pharrell and Marvin Gaye. Those issues of copyright are still happening, and that was a song from 30 years back. And you can only make so many chord progressions. So it falls within that same scope that it becomes very difficult to actually put a copyright onto your style. I don't know if that actually in any way answers. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, if I may also add to that, I think whilst it sort of seems a lot easier to think about copyright when we're thinking about produced items, right? A lot of us are screenshotting and creating memes left, right, and center. And outside of like a trademarked, I'm creating this object of art or whatever, piece of music, but what is the ethical considerations and the ethical responsibilities we have when we take a clip out of like a longer conversation out of context, right? and we send it because it's funny or whatever, for whatever reason, right? So I don't think that we should also separate some of these conversations from what we are doing with the technologies that we have, right? Because AI is not there, it's here on our phones. And that's actually why it's become such a big conversation, because it's not actually this thing that sits there with industry, right? It's this thing that actually we are using a lot more than just going into ChatGPT. It's like when you're on WhatsApp and you're cutting and pasting and whatever, right? So let's not go too far. But the interesting thing is that the whole discussion has been around what is the thing that I'm inputting into AI to get it, for me to be able to use it and to get what it is that I want. But the conversation around super intelligence, right, is that at some point there's this idea that we won't have to input anything. It will be inputting itself. So what does that mean then when we get there? But I think that the issues around fear that we have are really fears of technology that have existed way before AI has existed. So let me leave it there. We're going to do one last round of questions, and then I'm going to ask our panelists to consolidate their answers so that they answer everything when they go up, they answer everything that concerns them or is directed to them. So one last round of questions. There was one here. Okay, 1 and 2, sorry. And then 3, 4, was that a wave? Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, did I miss someone here? 6, 7. Okay, that's it. Okay, 1, 2. That's it. All right then. And then please try also condense your question. Thank you.
Afternoon, everyone. My question is based on Mr. Styli. When he mentioned something about upskilling, as a scenario, when back then we have people who were bookkeeping, also receptionists or cashiers, but looking at things now, AI, maybe we're no longer having cashiers, maybe around 2030, or Uber drivers, maybe cars will drive themselves. How are we going to upskill or reskill those type of jobs? Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Afternoon, everyone. My name is Sonabi Somangi. So my question is to all the panelists. It's concerning policy. So I do understand that, okay, any technology does come with the goods and the bads. So when you talk about AI, is there any conversation about regulating it? So as to make sure that it doesn't become destructive. The example that I can make when you're talking about the hydrogen energy, some countries decided that they can actually use that as atomic bombs. So when it comes to AI, is there a conversation about actually regulating it so as to make sure that it doesn't become destructive technology? Thank you so much.
Good afternoon to all the panelists. The first question is for Jackson and Jonathan. What is the impact of ease on creativity and critical thinking? Because we know how easy AI has made it for us to attain information and also for us to express ourselves. And can we track just where art was pre the advent of AI and where it is now? And is art getting better over time, or is that ease taking away from communication in the sense and creativity? And then the other question would be to the CEO of the Daily Maverick. How do you generate profits for your team? So there is an understanding of advertising on the internet. How did you manage to grow your business to a point where you have so many employees, and how do you pay them? Thank you.
Good afternoon to all the panelists. My question is for Dr. van der Walt. Do you think it's possible that AI would sort of actually bring back the value into art in a sense? Because due to AI being able to generate images, it means that any one of us can go on and generate images for whatever purposes that we use, you see. And that means that in the sense that human generated art is going to become a very rare thing in the future. Thank you.
Afternoon. My question is to Mr. Styli. You said that you have found a way to incorporate AI into the workplace for workers who maybe their English is not their mother tongue. But where do we draw the line? Because now I'm sitting here as a student, and if I think that, oh, well, I can use Grammarly, for example, to fix my mistakes, and I can work for someone like Mrs. Styli, who doesn't mind me using Grammarly, like, where do we draw the line to say no? Like, is it making us lazy to actually just use Word? Like, Word has a function to fix grammar mistakes. So is it now making us lazy? And where do we draw the line now to say no? Like, you cannot use AI, you know? Thank you.
Hello everyone. My name is Millicent Moing. My question is to everyone. It says, in a world where most of the youth is negligent about AI, overcoming them, no suppressing their human abilities, most of us we relying on AI, forgetting to critically think. What advice would you give to someone out there who's solely relying on AI and they no longer trust their instinct? Thank you.
No. Good question.
Afternoon, everyone. My name is Sianda Mambila. My question is, now that more jobs are and will be created with the involvement of working with AI as a teammate, what are some of the ways that the workplace can measure potential candidates that they can indeed work with AI rather than just putting in someone that you don't even can measure?
Mr. Jackson had to leave. Unfortunately, he had another meeting that was starting now at 3. So I think that you had a question for him. Unfortunately, what we're going to do is maybe try and get him to send his responses after the thing, maybe get your details and respond to you in that way. That would be the best thing. So sorry about that. And then can I ask you to respond for all the questions that are related to you, whoever starts first.
Forgive me if I've missed something, but I'm going to start around that idea of tracking when AI started. I think was your question, and how it influenced art, if it did. So I think it did. There is obviously a chronological point in which the technology was getting used in the public realm. But for generative AI, I think it did coincide with the rise of NFTs as well within the digital art space. So it came, and I think maybe that's why we're feeling a bit of a what's the word? A delayed reaction to ethical issues or to copyright issues regarding AI, because it came with a system that already gave credential or authenticity to a digital item on the blockchain, which is the system of NFT development. So I think at that time there was still a confusion as to what was fully AI generated and what was a digital artwork. And that's why you saw examples of that AI generated artwork actually winning a digital art competition. So even within the digital sphere, it sort of crept in like a ninja, you know? So I think in reflection back, you could probably find maybe 1 or 2, I can't say for sure, 1 or 2 artworks that were coming around that time that competition, the winner of that competition. But I think, was it related to your question? I'm not sure about whether art is actually improving or getting better. And I think that also then relates to the other question about anyone can make new AI-generated artwork. So what happens to that sort of human-made or craft space of making with your hands? And I think that the question is, in all these moments, it becomes a space where you also reflect back on what came before. So you ride this wave of new, and we're actually seeing it now within the South African art scene, is that there is a lot more traditional craft-based media, traditional crafting methods and techniques being reintroduced into contemporary art. And it's getting a huge voice. It's getting a lot of international recognition. It's getting a lot of support financially. And you can only speculate that that is because of the rise in the parallel space, that the rise of the digital and the AI-generated artworks. So, and there's artists such as Andile Dialvani and Patrick Bongoy, who work, Andile works with ceramics, clay, just clay, traditional vessels at large scale, but these are getting supported in contemporary art spaces because they carry with it a rich history of heritage. So I think in the AI space, when it comes to human making, I think it's going to put further pressure, well, not pressure, but further attention onto both the craft making space, traditional craft, and how that can have a resurgence. But then also it's going to become a space where, because anyone can make anything, the idea and that idea of conceptual art is going to actually get a lot stronger. Or more important will be placed on what that idea was behind the fact that you used AI and you weren't just replicating a landscape in someone else's style, for example. And that's such as that artist I mentioned, Refik Anadol, who he collaborated with other scientists, he collaborated with neuroscience, he collaborated with industry professionals. And in those spaces, those collaborations are mutually beneficial, because if you collaborate in an engineering space as an artist, a lot of the times the engineers aren't utilizing the technology that's developed for their application. They've not used it on organic forms. For example, they're using scanning and 3D printing and milling for technical based items, gears, things like that in robotics. So often when it comes to collaboration in the art space with these industries, tech industries and medical science, it's a refresher for their thinking as well, because it's outside the box of their specific operation. So I think that's where the benefit is going to come, is where you're going to see a lot more artists that are collaborating across different fields, because tech is sort of leveling those connection points. I hope that answered some of those questions. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go quite quickly here because I think we're running out of time. There are quite a few questions. The first one was, as more jobs are at risk and people are being replaced, how do we upskill? I think you're in the right place, right? This is what university is for, and this is where you're here to learn how to think for yourselves and to get exposure to these kinds of conversations, to know that maybe the university education isn't enough. It's a starting point. It's a launching pad to then go and do these other things. And so that's, I would always recommend, rolling up your sleeves, getting your hands dirty, and really embracing these tools and experimenting. And I think the more that you do that, and the more you put out there into the world, the more likely that you are to be noticed with that. With regards to the policy around, should we be regulating AI in order to prevent it from becoming destructive? This is a question that's been asked in some of the the highest and most important corridors in the world, right? Policy at the governmental level, at between the West and countries like Russia and China and If we regulate on the one side, is there a risk that, or if one side regulates and the other side doesn't regulate, will the one side fall behind? And so there's this arms race that happens. And there's also, from what I've read, from what I've read, regulation does play a part in terms of increasing the potential risk associated, but the biggest factors in terms of how destructive AI could be, from what I've read, again, is the pace at which we get to super intelligence. So the faster we get there, the riskier it is, and also the concentration of the development. So if there's one organization or one entity or one country that is speeding towards super intelligence, that is the worst case scenario for humanity. What we need is according to some of the scholars on this topic, is we need competition and more organizations that are getting closer to super intelligence at a slower rate. And so that'll help identify the problems and potential issues that comes with that. But the problem with all of this is that it is an arms race. There's a lot to win. There's a lot to gain from getting there and getting there first. And so that is the challenge and the paradox of development of AI, is that there are great spoils for those who get there first, but potentially the destruction of humanity as well. So no chance to enjoy those spoils if we get there. So yeah, these are all really difficult and big questions that everyone from the most resourced tech organizations in the world to leaders of countries. And we see now organizations like OpenAI and some of the other generative AI companies have restricted the outputs of some of the results. And there's others, like now if we look at Grok, no restrictions whatsoever. And so you can go into Grok, and I'm not saying that you should, but you can go in, type my name or a politician's name, doing almost anything, and it'll generate an image for you. Now, the implications of that are going to be massive. And so there are going to be issues, especially as we build up to a US election as well. So the pace and number of people is probably the biggest thing there, and regulation can play a role there in determining who can develop, what they have to disclose once it gets to a certain size. And so I think regions like the EU are working on things like that. Question: how does Daily Maverick generate profits, and how did we grow to be able to employ so many people? The answer is with difficulty. It is incredibly difficult to do what we've done. It is, I used to say it's a minor miracle. I've upgraded it to a major miracle. I don't think Jesus could have done it. And so you need a diversified income stream. So the way we've structured ourselves, we can access philanthropy, grants and donations. On the one side, we generate advertising, commercial sponsorships, and advertising of events and advertising online and in the print publication. And then we have a voluntary membership program. We believe in keeping our journalism free for everyone to be able to access it, regardless of your ability to pay. But we do ask those who feel like they can and would like to become part of a membership program so that we can keep it free for all South Africans. And so it is incredibly difficult to do that. And we keep trying to fill the holes that have been left by the 70% of people who've left the industry, either willingly or because of retrenchments. And so there's this big challenge at the moment, and something that is being felt around the world. Even the biggest markets, like the US, has experienced close to 60% loss of its journalists in the last 10, 15 years. There was a question around where do we draw the line on using generative AI to help with production of journalism. This is where guidelines and policy and case studies come into play. What I shared with you today is not shared by all my colleagues. I have no problem with that example I gave you of someone going out into the field, interviewing people, taking notes, coming back and asking ChatGPT to help write the first draft, because I believe that the original thought, that the decision to go to that place, to speak to those people, to take those notes, and then to come back and say, help me with this, the final production of grammatic style and English language, which I don't believe should be a barrier for journalism, right? So like English is the bridge language for the world. It is, I think, only the fourth most spoken first language in South Africa, and yet, we're expecting people to write amazing words of English prose with that. And so I don't believe that should be a barrier. Not everyone is as open-minded by that, but that's where the guidelines come in. And that's where we say, this is acceptable, that isn't, this scenario. And to be continuously coming back to people and sharing that and saying, hey, this happened and that's not okay, or this happened in another organization and let's debate that. Like, where do we agree on this and that? And so I believe at the end of the day, like when you drive a car, do you really care if a human made it or a machine made it, right? As long as it gets you from A to B and gets you and your family there from A to B, or you and your loved one safely, that's what you want out of the car. You don't care that it was made by a human. So I like to think of it from the audience's perspective, right? Are we in the business of, we're in the business of servicing their needs, creating journalism that can help them know more, know better, help them make better decisions, help them navigate life, help protect democracy. And so there are going to be times when machines will be able to, or AI can do a better job or help augment the job of humans. And so I don't really, I don't have a hard rule against not using it. I have a more liberal approach to that, but it is incumbent on us to publish those guidelines and to tell people what is and isn't acceptable. Are we losing the ability to think critically, and how do we develop it? I think the answer to this one is yes and no. We will lose the ability if we let ourselves. You can, for example, do a critical thinking exercise with ChatGPT. You can paint or create a scenario in which you, Socrates, Nelson Mandela, and a couple other people are in a room having a debate about, whether artificial intelligence or AI-generated art is ethical or not, for example, or some other big topic, right? And you can play out that scenario, and it will represent Socrates or Nelson Mandela's thoughts based on what it's been trained on. And you can see this play out and interact with it back and forth. And I see an example like that as a great example of how you might be able to develop your own critical thinking by using these tools. And so it'll come back to that thing of, are you willing to spend the time to develop it? When a lot of people will maybe opt out for not spending the time. And you find this often with a lot of these tools, that first interaction that you have is generally not good enough. But in order to get really good at it, you have to spend a lot of time fine-tuning it, tweaking it, figuring out what the right prompt is, not this, not that. And then, you got to spend the time to do the hard work. And I think that in itself makes you think critically as well. It's like, how does this thing work in order for me to try and get the best answer so that we might be able to get to a place of automation? And then finally, how do we assess candidates in the workplace who are using these tools to do that? And it's a good point. We do need to adjust our recruitment techniques in response to this. And we've seen this in places where we've kind of relied in the past that journalists and reporters, their work goes out into the world. And so it should be very easy to do a lot of that assessment just from their published works. But their published works aren't their original pieces of work. It's been commissioned by an editor who may have told them what the story is that they should go out and write. It's been fact-checked potentially by someone else. It's been improved by Grammarly, and it's gone through some kind of production process. And so I think live projects and testing in a place where people can generate quick answers, give them a task, ask them to use these tools. I think that is how we're probably going to need to assess people to combat both of those things. One where their work has been smoothed over by other people, but also to see how they use these tools or if they use these tools, because it might become a requirement that they need to be able to do so many different bits and pieces, and we need to see them doing that in action. And so those live kind of testing facilities and assessments are probably going to increase.
Thank you very much. We normally ask our panelists to wrap up, but because we're running out of time, we're not. So can we give them a hand? I also recognize that we didn't answer your question about where's the line about using AI in the classroom. And I think the answer is that if you're putting in my question that I gave you for the essay and you take that essay assignment and send it back to me, you've crossed the line. If you're putting in your own inputs and asking it to shape what data you've already collected, then you haven't crossed the line, and you're more likely to get grace from your lecturer if your essay looks different from what everyone else has handed in, but they always look the same. So, but yeah, so like I said earlier, we are all trying to navigate this space and all trying to figure it out, and lecture by lecture, you speak to them. However, I'm not going to go further on that. I will ask our Deputy Dean to close us off and send us home. Thank you. Dr. Jakilak.
Going to keep you long, but yeah, just good afternoon. I was going to say to our dean, but she's left. And of course to our ex-DVC, Prof. Foxcroft, hello from us, and just to the faculty staff and students and our guest speakers today, and our wonderful facilitator. Thank you so much, and to the organizers, good afternoon. And of course, the faculty's Digital Humanities Hub for your continued awesomeness. Good afternoon to you. I always feel like a moment, like a bittersweet moment when we have to end a function. It's bitter because we wanted to carry on, don't we, and ask more questions. But it's sweet, I think, because we take so many wisdoms from the speakers today about your experiences and also just the advice that you have for us. So I just want to thank you, but I want to start to thank our students. I see they're busy leaving, so let me thank them quickly. Thank you for coming and for your interest. I was saying to some of my colleagues now on WhatsApp, you're so interested in this topic, and I know it affects your futures. That's why you really, your future here, in your present with us as well. So thank you very much for your interest. We are trying to take on board what Mr. Charalambous has said, to work in transdisciplinary ways, cross disciplines, you know, so that we can prepare you well for this unpredictable world of work. So now I want to go to my notes, and I want to say thank you to our guest speakers for advancing our thinking about AI, the workplace, and humanities. We are so honored really to have had you in our space today, Jono, Mr. Charalambous, Mr. Tshabalala. I will say more to you later, but I just also want to thank our Digital Humanities Hub. We are the first Digital Humanities Hub nationally at universities. So we launched last year when was it, Johannes? In December. And because this is a very new field in South Africa, globally, I think it's been around for a while, but we're the first hub, so we were very proud of this space. We're also in a race to the moon with our other institutions about things that we are doing. And so this workshop today is part of a series of workshops that we have monthly to help us consider how we locate ourselves in a digital humanities in the global South, on the African continent. What does it mean to be a digital humanities in Africa, and how do we become part of that conversation? How do we continue to be part of this conversation, not to be led by big tech, Jude, or by by the global north only, but to tell us how to do it. But we also want to be informing this conversation. So thank you very much. Thank you very much to our library colleagues who always come. Those are the librarians, our faculty librarian at the back. You want to wear? I hope you know her, that you've all gone to the library. She says to me, a lot of people are still coming there. So I'm glad we're glad to hear that. So just in terms of this workshop, how it forms part of this series of events that's helping us to critique AI, critique ourselves, how we theorize, in the humanities, we like to theorize, but also how we do. We don't only want to talk about what are the ethical implications of AI. We want to give you the tools as well. Not just that you're going to be the ones that's going to be talking about how bad AI is or how good, but that you can use the tools. So that is where the digital humanities space, that's where we are in. We are conceptualizing this curriculum for our students. It's not yet rolled out, but watch this space. So in the faculty, we are looking to the past for the wisdoms of the past. So the digital archive is very important for us. So we're doing a lot of work in that space, but we are also looking at the present, how to prepare you for this space, this digitized world of work. And then, of course, this imagined future for you as well. So the work of our guest speakers, we heard Mr. Charalambous, we saw him at the awards evening, the Dean and I, and then we had a conversation with Thomas about, so we must invite him because it sounds so interesting. Somebody who's at the intersection of the business world and the humanities. And of course, our media students can benefit a lot. So we were so excited. And of course, Mr. Tshabalala, I must have taught him because he did English language studies, he did linguistics. So those of you who are doing LESV, you see where you can go. Did you tutor him as well? So, I mean, yeah, all our students who are doing language studies, LESV, you see, you can go places. So you don't have to ask us, what can I do? So thank you very much. So just lastly, the work of our guest speakers, the work you're doing, Jono, it was so fascinating to hear all about art and craft. It's inspiring us. It's showing us how the humanities matters, like Mr. Tshabalala says, in a world of technology for a preferable future, Mr. Charalambous, with AI as our partner, Jono. So we just thank you again. And we have some gifts for you. I'm going to call up the Humanities Digital Hub Coordinator. He's just going to stand here. And then Ali, Ms. Dr. Sibeko, who is our leading light in the faculty, and not only in the faculty nationally, he's starting to make a big imprint. He is making a big imprint in the sphere of the digital humanities, working with lots of national universities. Was also our emerging researcher last year. He's doing a lot of research. So that's Dr. Sibeko. And then I'm also going to call up Mr. Alan Murdoch. Ellie is also in the hub, and they're going to hand out the presents. So we're going to, Jono, you want to come up? Mr. van der Walt, where are they? Oh, yeah, they are. Sorry. So thank you. We hope this will, it's a book. It's called Achieving Mandela. And it's about the university and how the university is trying to, live up to the legacy of Mandela. And this is helping us, this talk today. So we hope you will read it and you will get some pearls of wisdom from it. Students, our time is up. Thank you for your patience with us. We have a takeaway for you. If you don't want it, you can leave it. It's fine. You can take one. But we'll see you in class. And in the master class, the media people.
The digital humanities people, please stay for your picture.